2022, we staying sovereign. That's the summary, y'all. Never feel you can't question the stuff you've been taught. If you think you've seen it all, then you're utterly wrong. Exchange Bitcoin on Lightning through submarine swaps. Building innovative products we feel break the seal. The financial layer is real for mass appeal. Like the Zero Protocol. Get a loan, pay whenever. No interest rate. Can't nobody ever do it better. Lock your Bitcoin, mint stables. Start earning revenue through the stability pool. Passively collect the loot. 110% collateral ratio. If you got that covered, the rest is all gravy, bro. There's no topic in Bitcoin we can't unwind. We'll debate the critics one Twitter spaces at a time. Bitcoin, hyperspace, and we're in the cockpit. Now it's time to discuss the latest with Sovryn. All right. Hope y'all enjoyed that. Thanks again for joining. All right. Glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. Thanks for sharing in this mission. The guidelines are, if you'd like to speak, raise your hand, wait patiently, and we'll call you up. And before going through the agenda, would anyone here for the first time like to introduce yourselves and say hi? All right, I guess we're all regulars here. So let's start it off with Armando with the presentation. I believe you can view it on the YouTube live stream.
Yep.
Yes. Great. Thanks everyone for joining. What I'm going to be going over today is an update about the Exchequer Committee. Just to give a little background, this update is serving two purposes. One, obviously to provide the community with an update on the work that the Exchequer Committee has been doing and what is planned for the next 6 months. But also hopefully to get some feedback from the community and some ideas around you, some ideas from you. And I will be posting this deck on the forum, and that'll be an opportunity for anyone who has some feedback or suggestions to voice them there. So what we're going to cover is an Exchequer Committee background, basically going over the establishment of the Exchequer Committee and its goals. Then we will talk about the sovereign treasury, the budget that the sovereign protocol is working under, and the use of funds. We will also give you guys a bit of a snapshot into the current headcount for the sovereign core team. Then we'll talk about some of the reporting and metrics that we're putting together that we want to start providing on a quarterly basis to the community. And then we'll get into the roadmap for the next 6 months, what we're working on now and what to expect to see, both in terms of work that's being done and SIPs that are coming down the line. So for those who are not familiar, the Exchequer Committee is a 7-person committee with representation from sovereign core team members, sovereign investors, and community members. The Exchequer Committee was established last year through SIP 15, and one of the reasons why we're providing this update is also because 2 of the members that were originally elected for the Exchequer Committee have since left the project, and so we want to give an update on what has been done since, and also alert the community that very likely next week a SIP will be raised to elect 2 very active community members to replace the 2 members that have left. In SIP 15, and also throughout the work that the Exchequer Committee has been doing, there were a number of responsibilities that were defined for this committee. First and foremost, the Exchequer exists in order to formulate and propose a budget to Bitocracy. Once a budget is approved by Bitocracy, it is the Exchequer's role to make sure that all the treasury expenses fall in line with that budget, and if there is potentially any excess to that, that has to be approved by Bitocracy as well. Beyond that, the Exchequer is responsible for managing the treasury, and that's also defined by the bitocracy. What was defined in SIP 15 was that not only will the Exchequer be making sure that there is a budget and that all expenses are in line with the budget, but also it was given the remit to use the Treasury for the purposes of providing liquidity to the Sovryn protocol to make sure that the products and the services that are being offered are optimized for users. It may very well be the case that this remit may change with another SIP, but that's how it stands right now. Beyond that, the Exchequer is working on defining policies for compensation for sovereign core contributors, and that's obviously one of the biggest buckets of expenses that the protocol has. And then report in a transparent way all of the workings of the Treasury back to the community. Over the last few months, the Exchequer has onboarded an additional resource to help with the financial reporting, and that's a global accounting firm called HC Global that have started working with on-chain protocols. And this is really a big assistance for us also to make sure that there's another level of audit, another level of control over the funds that are held in the Treasury, and obviously a way for us to provide financial reporting at the highest standards. For anyone interested in the initiation of the Exchequer Committee and what's been formulated up until now, the relevant SIPs are SIP 15, which is formulation and structure, SIP 19, which was the budget approved, and by the way, this budget was approved until the end of 2021, and the Exchequer is currently in the process of formulating a new budget for the next 12 months. And so that will be shared within the next update over the next couple of weeks. And then SIP 29 was an extension to SIP 15, and basically provided the Exchequer with additional SOV from the adoption and dev pools for the purposes of further development of the protocol. This slide, it just gives a small snapshot of the Treasury, and again, I want to emphasize that the full financials for 2021 are very close to being finalized, and when they are, they will be published, but I wanted to give you guys just a sense of where we stand. So Sovryn Protocol has raised to date 3 rounds of funding from investors and from the community, totaling approximately $23 million. The majority of these funds were raised in Bitcoin, and because the Treasury is providing liquidity for a number of pools within the system, the Treasury composition, can we please make sure that everyone's muted, Judas? Thanks.
Background noise, yeah. Muted.
So since the Treasury is on an ongoing basis providing liquidity to different aspects of the system, the composition of the Treasury portfolio fluctuates quite often. But as of the end of 2021, the Treasury balance was 16.7 million, with the majority held in BTC, and then the remainder mostly held in USD, with 5% in other crypto assets, depending on the different pools that the Treasury is providing liquidity to. In terms of the use of funds, and as I mentioned, there are 2 primary ways in which the funds are used. One is obviously operating expenses, and the other is liquidity provision. SIP 19 passed last year, approved a temporary budget through December 31 of last year. And the information below gives you a snapshot of what was approved, and the information here is one-to-one what was in the SIP, so it's easy to see and to compare where they correspond, but essentially At the time, the core team was structured into the following circles, being development, community, creative, marketing, and operations. Active expenses refer to active headcount that were already working with the core team at the time that SIP 19 passed. Open positions refer to additional expected headcount that we needed to account for. And then other expenses refer to all non-headcount expenses, whether they're one-time or recurring. And the information here are essentially monthly averages from June until November 2021. And again, that's because the final financials for last year are being finalized as we speak. But what we can see is, as a whole, the percent utilization of the budget that we actually had until the end of last year sits at an average of around 65%, and one of the main drivers for that is because there was a total of approximately $1 million that was dedicated for exchange listings, and we managed to minimize those expenses or essentially not use any of that budget by two things. One, collaborating with exchanges such that they are investors as well, and negotiating with them such that any fees that are required for listings, if those fees are required, could be paid in SOV. So that expense wasn't utilized, and hence the 65%, but regardless, even taking that out of the equation, we have about 80% utilization of the budget. We expect those numbers to increase with the next budget now that we have a lot more information around how the protocol works, what kind of resources are required. But again, the main thing is that we don't budget too high and leave too much leeway, but on the other hand, obviously not budget enough such that we need to go back to Bitocracy to get additional funding. In terms of liquidity provision, we generally categorize this under two main buckets, one being passive liquidity and the other being active liquidity. The majority of the liquidity provided is passive in the sense that it is taking treasury funds and utilizing them to kickstart different pools and providing the initial assets to allow for trading in those pools. As time goes by and those pools start developing organic liquidity, we're able obviously to pull out that liquidity and utilize it for more active engagement with the protocol. Examples of active liquidity are elements of the system such as liquidators, RBOTs, XUSD pool. I know there have been recent issues with XUSD in terms of not having enough funds from Binance Smart Chain or having difficulty extracting funds, and this is something that we're actively both utilizing the Treasury to solve and also actively working with Babelfish team. And that's just an example of some active Treasury management that the Exchequer oversees. Here we have a snapshot of the head count for the different circles, and we also have a new designation of the circles that will be relevant for the budget that the Exchequer will be publishing within the next few weeks. And the way the teams are designated now is the primary team being development, which obviously covers all of the technical aspects as well as design aspects of the system. This team constitutes the majority of contributors. About 55% of core team members fall within the circle. Then we have the second largest group, which is called adoption. And adoption is divided into two main categories. The first being marketing, and then the other being guidance, where guidance is primarily concerned around interfacing with the community, communicating with the community, solving issues and providing support. The last and smallest group is the operations team. This team deals with finance, partnerships, people management, and constitutes about 10% of the headcount. And so we currently have close to 70 active core team members. With the current budget that will be proposed, we'll be looking to budget for a total of 81 contributors for the protocol. One of the main responsibilities of the Exchequer Committee is to report back to the community. And I'm definitely aware and believe that the Exchequer needs to improve and provide a much more strict cadence of reporting. And part of this effort is through this update. And I hope that you guys will see and hear a lot more from us. And the first thing that we want to institute is quarterly updates around the Treasury and around different economics and financials. And the Exchequer Committee met last week and is proposing to provide a number of different aspects in this reporting. The first regards to the Treasury itself, and that's portfolio composition. And here we want to take a step further and not only provide the portfolio composition of the Treasury on a quarterly basis, but the team has developed an Exchequer dashboard which will go live in beta this quarter. And that dashboard will give everyone 24/7 access to see on-chain where all the assets are held at any given point, and will allow for a much higher degree of transparency and controls for the Exchequer Committee. In addition to that, we will provide information around how the funds are being used, and that will also include the SOV portion of the Treasury. The last update that we gave about SOV payments was in October, and we expect to be releasing an update on all of the SOV allocations together with the financials for 2021. And obviously, that leads us to the financials, which will be a balance sheet and profit and loss statements for each quarter. Beyond that, we will provide standard token information, protocol KPIs being TVL, volume, fees generated by the protocol, the number of SOV staked, information about our users, and there is some of this already in the wiki, but we plan on providing much more information around this, and eventually in Q2 also have a fully fledged dashboard where all of this information will be readily available on an ongoing basis. And we will be providing information about revenue drivers that are beyond fees generated by the protocol. And these are things like the liquidator that the Treasury is running, or any other potential sources of revenue. Lastly, the Exchequer Committee will be publishing a summary of all the meetings that it held, and primarily the decisions, as well as the rationale for the decisions on a quarterly basis. But what we would really like to know is if there is anything beyond what's listed on this slide that you as the community would like to see in these reports, anything that wasn't mentioned or anything that you believe deserves more attention. Like I mentioned, I will be posting this in the forum, and this is really something that we would like to get your feedback on so that we can adapt and change and implement those in the reporting that's coming in February. In terms of the Exchequer Committee roadmap, what we expect to come out in Q1, first and foremost, is the SIP regarding the election of new Exchequer committees so that they can officially begin their role. And this is obviously due to the fact that the current Exchequer Committee is operating with only 5 members rather than 7. And so we hope to bring in 2 quite active community members into the Exchequer Committee. And in general, I don't believe this will be in Q1, but we want that to be kind of the basis of starting to develop a more robust delegation culture within the community, where community members can start having more influence around the direction of the protocol. Right after that, we will be distributing the proposed budget for 2022. The way we will be doing it is posting it on the forum, allowing for a period of perhaps 1 or 2 weeks for the community to review, provide feedback, and then raise that for a SIP, depending on what kind of amendments may need to be added. We will be finalizing the Exchequer Committee reporting framework and cadence. We will be finalizing contributor policies and making those public, so anyone who wants to start working on Sovryn or is looking for a position within the core team can easily see those and reference those, and obviously for that to also serve as a resource for active contributors. We are also starting to conduct a review of all the revenue drivers and the liquidity provision, and starting to get a lot more scientific about it in terms of optimizing those revenue drivers to make sure that the treasury is utilized in the best way possible. And we'll be releasing the first version of the treasury reporting dashboard in order to give the community a lot more visibility. In Q2, we expect to work on optimization of the revenue driver, making sure that whether it be through bridges or through liquidations, the Treasury is able to balance between driving revenue and making sure that the system is usable and competitive. And we will start focusing on a transition from liquidity provision to treasury management. As the protocol matures and grows, the need for liquidity provision will decrease. And we are already starting to see that happen. And the natural next step of the treasury is to make sure that we have strategies in place to ensure that the treasury, to the extent possible, can be evergreen, and it's treasury that is cash flow positive and can cover the operating expenses of the protocol potentially for an indefinite time. We will also be introducing reporting dashboard improvements, like I mentioned, having a lot more metrics and aspects of the protocol be publicly available. And we'll be introducing additional systems around management and controls of the security around the treasury and around how the community can really act as an additional set of eyes and additional controls over all the spend that is happening. One last note on these dashboards. The core team has done an incredible job of building out these tools and is still working on it. And that shouldn't be taken for granted because, as you guys know, Sovryn is a DAO, and a lot of the tooling for DAOs is either non-existent or it is not compatible with the RSK chain, or it is simply not robust enough. And I truly believe that one of the ways in which Sovryn is pushing the envelope is in terms of the governance, not only with the experimentation or willingness to experiment with new models such as sub-DAOs, but also in terms of providing best practices for how DAOs can manage themselves and provide the right kind of controls and transparency to the community. And another part of this, which isn't directly tied to the Exchequer, but another part of this is also building out the front end for Bitocracy and giving SOV token stakers the ability to have a lot more visibility into what they're voting for and how they can influence the direction of the protocol. So that covers the Exchequer update. Again, I'll be posting this in the forum. It would be really great to get your feedback on what you would like to see. And once we have that feedback, we'll be implementing it in our reporting. And so over the next couple of weeks, you should see a number of announcements and a lot of information coming from the Exchequer. And it would be wonderful to hear what you think. That's all from me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much, Armando. Do we have any questions from our attendees today regarding that presentation? Or any feedback?
Hi, Ingmar. It's XL Surfer here. Armando, I'm curious, how is the RSK integration with Gnosis coming for the Treasury dashboard?
That's actually complete, and we'll be implementing it in the first half of February. That's the Treasury dashboard, the beta version of the Treasury dashboard. And there are other more complex integrations, which is essentially taking different apps and making them compatible with RSK. This is work that I believe will probably bleed into Q2. To give you an example, one of the things that we would love to implement is a way to stream compensation to contributors on a block-by-block basis, or give contributors the ability to pull their pro rata version of their monthly compensation at any point during the month. The idea of paying contributors on a monthly basis is quite archaic, and we would love to move away from that. But there are a number of other different apps that you can integrate with Gnosis that we're interested in implementing. But the first release is ready and should be out in the wild pretty soon.
Am I correct in understanding that this work was done together with Gnosis, or was this, so is it official RSK support that Gnosis is offering, or is this a fork or a work that the Sovryn core team has been doing?
The Sovryn core team was in touch with the Gnosis team, but this was primarily done in-house.
So I believe we have one more question, and I would like to move on to Roro.
Yeah, it's a general question. I apologize if you addressed it, but what was the reason the two members left? And was there any issues with that, or was it just a simple kind of wasn't working?
No, actually, those were two contributors who left for personal reasons, nothing relating to anything professional. But one thing that was the case with the first group of members of the Exchequer Committee was what ended up happening is that 5 of the members were part of the core team, and 2 were external representatives of investors in the project. And when these 2 members left the project, we wanted to take that as an opportunity to make sure that the representation from the core team existed, because the core team is closest to the workings on the project, but also we didn't have enough of kind of a voice or a conduit to the community. And we started looking over the last few months for community members who have been in the community for a while, who are quite active in the community, meaning they're also quite familiar with the protocol, and to put them in a position to get a lot more visibility into the workings of the Exchequer Committee, mainly so that they can communicate that back to the community and bring any concerns from the community or questions from the community back to the Exchequer.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, so to just be conscious of time, I'm going to move on to Aurora. Are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Thank you. Hey, everyone. So I'll quickly just begin with what we deployed to mainnet since our last call and then go on to the roadmap for February, which is quite packed. So last week we deployed the Rubicon update, and well, some of you might have noticed because it was a very long downtime. That was because Rubicon basically redeployed almost all of the protocol modules. It needed a redeployment of almost all of the loan token logic contracts, so it was a massive update for us. It did not look very massive for you guys because very little changed on the interface level. But we have a lot of improvements there which were just very important for us, such as tiny position prevention, for example. Some of you who are monitoring the stats might also have realized that the number of our positions has gone down quite drastically. That's not just because of the Bitcoin downtrend, but also or for mostly because of the Rubicon update, which just allowed us to clean up with all of the little dust positions on the system, which were just cluttering the system and making the watchers slower and that sort of stuff. We also included a few other small improvements, such as an accuracy update for the staking rewards and a large refactoring of the loan token logic, which was required for us to be able to add additional functionality there in the future, just because we were hitting the limits of the maximum code size. So this is just a small number of things which are part of the Rubicon. And apart from Rubicon, we also updated the bridge backends, which means that the gas costs are calculated much better on the backend side, leading to a better handling on the bridge, which should have a positive effect on your waiting times, just because the gas settings are now much more precise and it's less likely that you will get stuck and have to wait until the gas prices are again dropping for your transaction to go through. We're still working a lot on the bridges, above all improving the gas costs so that we can lower the fees and it will just be more, well, it will be cheaper for you guys to move your funds across. Now, just going on with the roadmap for what's to come in February 22, and I'm going to share my screen. You see we have 5 deployments in the next month. So we will be very busy just pushing out stuff. We start with a 2-way fast BTC, which was long awaited. It is, like I mentioned previously, it's going to be still a limited version, meaning that you will not yet be able to send multiple Bitcoin at once, but there will be limits until we feel just more confident. That's not saying that we did not take all of the precautions. We had 2 security audits, we had penetration testing, but still, because this is handling a lot of user funds, we are extremely careful, and we are first going to launch it in a limited way, and then after we were able to monitor it for a while, we're going to increase the limits. 1 week later, on February 7th, is going to be the second mint airdrop, as well as the first distribution of mint tokens to the SOV stakers. And for the SOV stakers to be able to withdraw those tokens, we have to update the rewards page so that you actually have an UI for doing it, because else it doesn't serve you much. The next week, on February 14th, Valentine's Day, we're going to launch the trading competition of the new PerpSwap product on Sovryn Labs. There is going to be a nice prize money. I think it's about $10K US in Sovryn tokens, which is distributed between the 3 best traders as well as the most helpful bug reports. This trading competition is going to happen on testnet, on Binance Smart Chain testnet, so no real funds at risk, and everyone will have the same starting conditions, so the same amount of tokens to start with. It's taking 1 week. There is going to be much better information out there from the adoption team over the next days and weeks. So just keep tuned there. Stay tuned. The week following that, on February 24th, is the next trading update, but this time on the main app. So we're going to update the trading pages. There was a redesign. You will hopefully find them much more useful now, and there are also additional features such as the limit orders. And last but not least, on March 1st is going to be probably the perp swap deployment on mainnet in our first whitelisted and limited version. Now I went over this roadmap with all of these dates on there, but I just want to let you know that these are dates which we are currently targeting, and they're still kind of pending the confirmation. This is just so you have an idea of what we're planning to push out this month, but there's no guarantee that we're actually going to hit these dates. It might be that some of them are slightly delayed in case we run into unexpected problems. But yeah, so you guys are aware of what's coming. And that's it from my side. Are there any questions?
If there are no questions, we can save that for the end. I would like to move on with some business development updates, starting with a dropper update from Exchequer.
Hey everybody. So yeah, I've been busy building since last year. We have an MVP running, and the bad news is it's not running on RSK. So what's happened is that we were exploring the different data API possibilities, and as Armando mentioned earlier in the call, there's not a lot of tooling on RSK that exists on other chains. And so we were exploring the possibilities of how it is that we can filter and display the data in the front end, what that means for back-end storage and everything. We were looking through the graph protocol and then moved on to covalent. And neither one of those really provided the amount of tooling that we need until we discovered a project called Moralis, M-O-R-A-L-I-S, which enabled us to make a fully functional DApp, which deployed all of our smart contracts for buying, selling, auctioning, etc., NFTs. And coincidentally, Moralis and Avalanche are putting on a hackathon this month, which is ending on Monday the 31st, which we're making a submission to with the fully functioning DApp, and are working together with the team from IOV Labs at RSK to get Moralis integrated, get RSK integrated and supported on Moralis so that we can do an RSK release. Things are going very positively with that. I do have an ask for the community. Going to be posting a link to a forum post on their DAO, which is encouraging the team to support an RSK integration. So it would be really great if you guys could upvote that. So next week I'm going to do an AMA in the Sovryn Trading Dojo Telegram channel together with Luca, and after we've done the hackathon submission. And then I'll show everybody the state of the DApp and give a wider explanation about what we're doing. As Origins has also made a pivot away from offering a token, it looks like we're also going to be funding Dropper, just basically using NFTs that'll have governance and revenue sharing built into them. So it'll be a little bit different governance model than what's existed so far in the Sovryn and RSK ecosystem. But essentially will achieve the same ends. And so, yeah, we're pretty close. And if you guys hang on till next week, then I'll be able to show you everything of what we got and what the rest of our roadmap is for the next couple of months.
Who's got some questions for Exchequer?
Yeah, I was just wondering, when you were comparing like the graph with Moralis, what were the main points that it came down to make that decision? What were the main trade-offs that led you to Moralis?
So
versus the graph specifically?
So the graph doesn't offer any official RSK support yet. So that's one thing. Secondly, it involves a governance process to get your graph put out onto the network. So you can host your own node to do your own services, but you're not on the public network. So there's deficiencies there. And secondly, we're looking for a one-piece backend solution that we didn't have to build a backend ourselves for doing all of the API calls, and the graph would require that to a certain degree for us to be building backend services. And we're just looking for a service that we can use, that we can scale up with. Moralis works basically out of the box to serve all of your front-end data that you need. So it's caching all of the on-chain data and providing it to you very rapidly. So the Moralis integration with the RSK would be very, very helpful to Sovryn itself as well. It would provide them additional services that would increase the speed of display of data on the front end.
Is it decentralized, or is it like an Infura kind of centralized service?
Well, it's a service with a DAO. There is governance. There's governance of the protocol and the service.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. Thanks.
Sure. Oh, one last thing that I forgot to mention is, though, even though we're going to be doing the funding and sales with NFTs as opposed to tokens, that there will still be for SOV stakers, there still will be benefits and early access. So the first pre-sale will be only for SOV stakers. That's coming up.
Awesome.
That's
Thanks
it for
very
me.
much.
Unless there's another question.
All right, I appreciate it. So any more questions, we'll save it for the end. I wanted to introduce another guest from a project called Tally, which is a Web3 browser wallet. Comstark, would you like to introduce yourself, the project, and how you developed an interest in working with Sovryn?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, it's great to meet you. For those who haven't spoken before, my name's Comstark. Very quickly, I've been a part of Sovryn since the origin sale. Big believer in everything Sovryn's doing. Fully into keeping, holding your own keys, but still being able to do something with your Bitcoin, and thinking very long term as to what the crypto community can become, and realistically what the crypto community will become, and doing our best to build the future we want and not be influenced by current powers that be. So it's a little bit about me. Today, as mentioned, I want to quickly chat with you about a new protocol coming out, or is out, called Tally.cash. So Tally is a Web3 wallet, hot wallet, that's essentially trying to do what MetaMask is doing, but with the ethos of Web3. So I'm going to guess everyone on this call knows who MetaMask is, so I probably don't have to explain it. But if you guys aren't familiar, there's two very big problems with MetaMask right now that I think this community might take to heart. The first one is that MetaMask is actually owned by a company, Consensus, and they are making tremendous amounts of money. Normally money is not bad, but of course in a Web3 world, when you have a central authority that sits in a jurisdiction like America that makes a lot of money in a topic that's as hard as crypto, we have to assume that there's a lot of risk that could happen with that central authority, them putting up walls to stop new entrants, or them working with governments and regulation and not being so decentralized like we think. The second big problem with MetaMask, as they're starting to make a lot of money, is they actually recently closed off some of their code. So MetaMask is not a fully open source platform, which should scare us all because of how big they are and how many transactions they actually do for the crypto market and how important they're slowly becoming. And so what Tally wants to do is essentially say, look, we can build a hot wallet. It's actually not that difficult. There's a lot of great wallets out there. Why don't we take the best of all of them, build a new hot wallet that's very easy to get new users onboarded, but follows the following ethos. Truly Web3, it's community owned, lowering fees to as much as that it can and distributing profits back to token holders or back to the community, and ensuring that we always stay open source and fully transparent in everything we do, and that there's no explicit point of risk, we'll say, for external regulations and anyone who might want to try and shape the future of crypto from the outside. And so Tally's pretty new. You can find out more, of course, if you Google tally.cash. We have a great Discord that is filled with all sorts of people trying to make this happen. And where we are right now is we have a developer version of the wallet that you can install for Chrome, Firefox, or Brave. And we're in the midst of constantly rolling out new features. One of the big things that we're trying to do is, of course, grow organically through the community. And we're doing that by trying to make partnerships and connections, both literally through development, but also through people, to other protocols that as individuals we love. So since I've been a part of Sovryn personally, and I think that what we're doing here is phenomenal, it's filled with real builders who care about the long-term future of the crypto world and what the impact on Earth will be, I thought it makes sense for us to try and build a connection, at least with wallets, and see where our businesses, to see where our protocols can work together to really build something great. And so right now we're trying to set up the first wallet connect so that you could use Tally to connect into Sovryn. It's still early. I'm trying to find a developer who has the bandwidth to actually do that right now. But long term, I can see a lot of benefits. So not to chat for too long about it, but some of the wallet features that the community suggested that we put in that MetaMask lacks, that other wallets have, of course, is the ability to auto-stake coins that you have and to vote directly from the wallet. And so when I hear those two features being tried to build onto Tally, I immediately think this is perfect for Sovryn. So that's a bit about us. Very early stages. We've been around now for a couple of months, we'll say. I urge everybody to join the Discord, to install the wallet, play around. We'd love to get feedback from people, both technical and non-technical. Personally, I'm a non-technical entrant into crypto, so all the work and help that I'm trying to do with Tally has nothing to do with development, unfortunately, because I just don't have that skill set. But we want as many people to join as possible and to offer their skills so we can build the best free Web3 wallet out there to serve the community. Apologies if that was a big mouthful. I'll stop now and open up to any questions you guys might have.
Cool. Let's take one question. First come, first serve.
Let's do it.
Does this work for RSK?
Right now, no. But like I said, we're still in the early stages. So we're trying to figure out how to be able to roll out to additional chains. Right now, the actual part that you can play with is just Ethereum ERC20.
Okay, I'm going to finish out the business development updates real quick, and then we can wrap this up, or wrap up the recording. And of course, you guys are totally open to stay here and chat it up off the record. So regarding the Zero product, we're exploring fiat on and off ramps so that users can get connected to fiat through the lending protocol. We've got one offer ready that we're reviewing, and this partner would give us access to their 350 partners, including tier 1 exchanges, and well-known lending and borrowing applications. We are exploring the Ichi Angel Vault. The Ichi Angel Vault is a form of protocol-owned liquidity, and I'm not as big brain enough to allow eloquently describe it, but it uses Uniswap v3 pools and buy orders through its stablecoin protocol to help with stability for all the assets in that system. And they've so far every asset to utilize it has done pretty well despite the market drops recently. So we're exploring with Ichi how to make that happen. I know it might be a big topic. We'll probably explore it on another call. The Lightning Bridge project has been greenlit for further funding of its proposed milestones. And that's all I have at the moment. Do we have any final questions for the last 5 minutes of this call? And these questions can be on any of the segments covered by the contributors thus far.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little bit late actually for this community call, but I just caught it. Yeah, I was wondering about the UI for the Sovryn app. Sorry if that's a bit off topic, but I've been meaning to ask for quite some time and looking to know like how much of the efforts by the team are being aimed at the front end versus the back end of the entire decentralized application. Because I think, yeah, let's start on that. And also, I would like to know if like UI updates, proper UI updates, are they planned? And yeah, if you could sort of speak to that a little bit, thank you very much.
So the design lead has been out sick recently. However, the UI is something that we are consistently working on, revising, reimagining, and we're looking to add more people with that focus to the project.
In general, we have far more capacity on the backend side, so that involves Solidity, but also Node.js backend services which are required than for the front end. And yeah, like Ingalandia said, we are hiring full stack devs which can work on front end as well as backend, just depending on how our requirements are. And there are UI updates coming, like one is scheduled for February. This is the update of the trading UI, and there should also be a trading of the borrowing UI coming sometime soon.
Maybe I'll just give sort of like a broader sense. Over year zero, so the year that just passed, there's been a huge amount of work, and I think you guys have seen constant improvements around the UI, the UX, and the depth in general. And frequently you'll click into the application and will ask you to update to the newest version. However, the vast majority of the work has been in building out the basic infrastructure of the systems, the core primitives, the trading systems, etc. Now that work is ongoing, but much of the core systems that we expected to deliver over the course of the first year, that we're now in the position of having delivered or being very close to having delivered. So perpetual swaps, Bitcoin-backed stablecoins are coming. We've basically completed the infrastructure roadmap as we saw it, with the exception, as we've mentioned a number of times, around the rollups. And so we expect over the course of this year to be placing a significant effort around accessibility. In other words, different ways that users can approach the system that will mean improvements to the dApp, improvements to UX, potentially the introduction of a mobile application. And for those of you who are interested, because you are front-end developers who want to get into Web3 or full-stack developers, we expect to be growing that team substantially.
All right, cool. Thank you very much. That explains why we've seen a lot more work on the back end as opposed to the front end. Well, looking forward to those updates. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to put a bow on this, the recording of the community call. I want to thank everyone for joining, being a part of the mission, in carving out a trail for Bitcoin-secured financial sovereignty and dismantling what people know and understand about money. So help us spread the word and create more sovereign individuals. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Telegram, subscribe to Sovryn YouTube channel, and visit live.sovryn.app. So stay sovereign, everyone. The recording is now off, and if you'd like to hang out for a bit and just chill, you're completely welcome to do that. So thanks, everyone.